To my right is Brian Buccellato. To my left is Ken Kristensen. Did I say that right?
Yeah, very good.
I guess for most of our day jobs, we make stuff up, right?
Comics.
So I guess what might be good, why don't we start with how we started writing comics. Ken, you go first.
All right.
Because I'm looking at you.
Yeah, it's a long, sordid tale. I graduated from college with the intention of writing comics. I moved to New York City because that's where comics were made. And I sent resumes to every editor at DC and Marvel, trying to get in any way I could. And I got a call back from an editor at DC saying, the comic book business is dying. This is in the mid-90s when Marvel was like chapter 11. But anyway, this guy at DC was like, comic book business is dying, there's probably not going to be comics in 10 years. Do not try to there's no jobs here, so don't even think about that, but also just give up and go do something else, get into another business. So I was crushed, my dreams were crushed. I reached out to as many contacts as I could in other publishing areas and got into the journalism business. Talk about a dying business. I went from comics to print journalism. I was a travel writer for about 5 years, and then I read Y: The Last Man, and that inspired me to try to get back into comics, which I read an interview with where Brian K. Vaughan said that he went to film school, and film school was directly related to him getting into comics, and I was like, that sounds like a good idea. There's a couple good film schools in New York City. Let me, apply. So I applied. I got into Columbia University's film program. I went there, and the very first class I took, they gave us Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics. I was the only guy in my whole class who had any interest in writing comics, but everyone had to read this fucking book. And they were like, everyone was like, oh, I'm gonna read a book about comic books. And I was like, yes, it was a good, it was a great sign that I made a good choice to change careers. And I read that book, and then within 2 months, I met M.K. Berker, and he and I decided, he did all my storyboards for film school, for all my short films, and he and I decided, let's partner up and break into comics. And so we came up with Todd the Ugliest Kid on Earth. That was, I think, our second pitch, and we set it up at Image, just a blind submission in the slush pile. And 13 months after we sent it in, Eric Stevenson called and said, we want to do this book, it's awesome.
So when was that?
That was 2007.
Okay.
So 2007, and then it came out in 2012, so it took us 5 years to do.
Wow.
But then, that was mostly because of success. MK set up, 2 books at Vertigo, and those lasted like 3 or 4 years. So,
So how much did you guys have in the can when the first issue came out?
we had 3.5 issues.
3.5.
Yeah.
Brian.
You just skipped yourself.
Yeah, it's fine.
Save the best for
I just don't want to talk.
Moderator. Can't talk.
Let's see. After I recovered from my head injury.
Let's take it from the head injury.
I went to NYU. I owed them a lot of money. They didn't let me finish. F them. I started working at a steel company, not doing important heavy lifting or anything, but in an office pushing papers. And so then one day, around 1994, my brother said, "Hey, he lived out in LA. He's like, I'm starting a coloring house to color digital comics. Do you want to come out and I'll teach you how to color?" So
I did like a crack house, with more computers.
Yes, it's like a crack house but with digital coloring. So
I don't even know what the equivalent would be. How does that?
It's a studio, There's a bunch of computers. It was like Photoshop 2.5.
No, but I mean, are people tweaked out on pixels, or how does that?
No, I think you're sort of. That joke died about a minute and a half.
No, I'm trying to keep going.
I'm trying to. They have to suffer through my origin, and you're just making it longer.
I'm making it better. Continue.
I'm just trying to get through it.
Okay, all right,
okay.
Go ahead. If you want to mess this up, it's fine. Go.
If I want to mess it up. Okay. We're just going to say
So you're
no,
coloring.
I'm not finished.
Okay.
This is a dramatic pause.
Fuck NYU. I think that was your point.
Yeah, so I started coloring comic books. I was in LA. I decided, hey, I want to be an actor, because that's what people do when they move to LA. So I took acting classes for 3 months. I started sending out my headshot, but I've had this shaved head forever. I was only getting called in for gangbanger roles. I booked some. I was like a death row inmate in one stupid movie, and two good things happened to me while I was working on these weird, stupid independent films. One, I realized I didn't want to act because I didn't like manipulating my emotions, because that sucks. And two, I wanted to write. I wanted to be behind the camera. I wanted to do the creative side. So I learned that, and I also met someone named Tim Story, who was a film school graduate, who ended up directing Barbershop and Fantastic Four. We did a movie together, and so I did a lot of writing for him. So I learned sort of the craft of screenwriting while I was supporting myself coloring comic books. And so after like a 20-year career coloring comics, I got the opportunity to write The Flash only because one of my closest friends is Francis Manipool, and I've been coloring him for a while. And he was offered the chance to write Flash for the New 52, but he had never written anything. So, you know, a lot of artists are storytellers, but they don't have sort of nuts and bolts of how to actually do the writing, and you know, there's a lot of craft that you have to learn. And of course, him knowing me as well, he knew that I know how to write. I've been screenwriting for 15, 16 years, trying to break through and all that kind of stuff. So he asked me to jump on board, and that immediately changed my life, because I went from being the colorist who writes screenplays that nobody wants to read to the comic writer who writes things that people want to read. And so that completely changed my life, and I still started writing comics. I still want to do film and television, but you know, I enjoy writing the funny books.
So what else are you working on now that Flash is almost done, right?
Yeah, I've got a 3-issue run on Flash with Patrick Zurcher. That's wrapping up with 29. Francis and I are doing the co-writing thing, and on Detective Comics as of 30.
What's that?
It's a dude. He's got a cowl. That's kind of like a Carl Higgins joke for those.
Oh no, that went over my head. I got that.
I'm doing a miniseries for Forever Evil called Rose Rebellion. That's wrapping up. I've got a few more issues left of the Black Bat for Dynamite. It's a 12-issue story arc. It's a pulp thing that I sort of reimagined in a sort of a realistic setting. So for those of you who like pulp, it's good. And I also have a book for Aspen. That's a 5-issue series called Executive Assistant Iris. So that's what comics
Called what? Executive Assistant?
Iris, yeah. It's probably that David Wohl wrote. This is volume 4. So I just took the character, and for those of you who don't know, I'm not going to get into it. And just went another way with it.
Cool.
Because I want to hear about, we all want to hear about how Kyle got into the biz.
Breaking in stories.
Kyle, tell us. You did a movie, right?
I did a movie, yeah. I I'm from Chicago. I started at the University of Iowa. I went there for 2 years, wanting to originally double major in computer science and film because I thought I needed a backup plan. Then I got there and realized I only wanted to do film, and this was not the right place for production. But I wasn't able to transfer for ultimately turned into 2 years. And so while I was there, I kind of stumbled into a creative writing class that they had. And I'd always kind of written on the side, but never as anything, never anything I really took seriously. I only ever wrote so I would have material that I could direct. When I started taking these creative writing classes, it was something I really enjoyed, and figured out that actually Iowa had like one of the top writing programs in the country. It's the Iowa Writers Workshop. I wasn't in the workshop because that's statistically like harder to get into than Harvard, but I was taking classes with members of the workshop because they were all grad students when I was like 19. So that's really where I started kind of to take writing a bit more seriously, and I ended up transferring to Chapman University in Orange County, where my emphasis was in directing in the film program. But I also had a big background in post-production, and I worked as an editor and a post-supervisor and a sound designer and everything else. And so when I decided to make my senior thesis film, because of my post background, I knew that I could pull together a lot of visual effects elements, and I could also put something together at a pretty high production value that would not be indicative of how little money we had to make it. So I started thinking about what kind of concepts and what kind of worlds would be fun to explore, and also serve as a calling card for me. And I had this idea a few years earlier that I actually used as a writing sample to get into film school, and it was called The League. It was about a superhero labor union in 1960 Chicago. And so I wrote it with one of my best friends, Alex Siegel, and I made it, I directed it, and I put it online. And one of my other friends who designed all the characters, I had hired him originally, named Eric White. He sent out a big email to everyone he knew in comics and film saying, "This thing's really cool, you guys should check it out." And one of the first emails I got back was from Joe Quesada, who was the editor-in-chief at that time of Marvel. And Joe happened to watch the film. It was like 27 minutes long, and really liked it, and asked if basically the conversation between us went back and forth, and he asked if I'd be interested in pitching to Marvel. And so I pitched for about 10 months to Tom Brevoort, and then landed a Captain America one-shot with that Alec and I co-wrote. And then from there, I kind of started to parlay that into other work, and ultimately ended up in DC, writing Batman books, Gates of Gotham, and then Nightwing and Deathstroke, and some other things. And so now, coming full circle, we just announced a couple weeks ago at Image Expo, my first creator-owned book. Alec and I are co-writing it, and it's called COWL, which stands for the Chicago Organized Workers League. And it is inspired by the film that really got things going for us. And yeah, so that's kind of where we're at now.
Nice. Sorry guys, that was really long.
Now you know everything you need to know about us.
Okay, so what is your guys' expectation for this panel? I know it says writing and methods in writing stuff with writiness. Do you guys